Welcome to Nightmare House of Horror. Tonight, we follow Margaret Holloway, who discovered that photographs capture more than memories. They document the presence of something that has been watching human families for generations, standing close enough to touch, but invisible to everyone except those it chooses to see it. When familiar celebrations contain uninvited guests, when family pictures reveal watchers in the shadows, when developing photographs requires more than chemicals and light, the question becomes whether you're preserving memories or feeding something hungry. This is the story of a photo developer who learned that every family gathering has been attended by the same patient observer, and the horrifying moment when she realized it had been standing directly behind her in every photograph of her entire life. Chapter 1. The Background Bleeds. It was 3 minutes past 2 in the morning on the 13th of November, when Margaret Holloway realized that human flesh was growing inside her, developing chemicals. The discovery came not as dramatic revelation, but as the slow recognition that the photographic solutions had been pulsing with their own heartbeat for weeks, thickening into something warm and organic that responded to her touch with muscular contractions that felt disturbingly familiar. The Henderson family photograph floated in the developer bath like a specimen in formaldehyde, the image emerging from blank paper with an urgency that defied the careful timing Margaret had maintained for 14 years at Holloway Family Photo Services. At 41 years of age, she possessed the kind of technical precision that came from developing thousands of family memories under the red safe light that now cast everything in the color of fresh blood. But tonight, the chemicals moved with their own agenda, pulling the image from the paper faster than chemistry should allow, revealing details that made Margaret's vision blur with recognition. The figure stood 6 feet behind the wedding party, wearing clothing that seemed to absorb light in ways that created impossible shadows extending toward the camera. Its face was turned with predatory attention toward the lens, features that belonged to no human ethnic category but suggested intimate familiarity with every possible human expression. What disturbed Margaret most was the certainty that this figure's mouth was moving in the still photograph, lips forming words she could almost hear whispering from the print itself. As she examined the Henderson photographs under magnification, the pattern revealed itself with nauseating consistency. The figure appeared in every family gathering across 3 decades of documentation, but its positioning had shifted with mathematical precision over the years. In early photographs, it stood at the edge of the family's perception. In recent pictures, it had moved close enough to rest its hands on the shoulders of unsuspecting children, its fingers extending into the family group with possessive familiarity. Margaret's hands trembled as she realized the figure cast reflections in windows and mirrors that showed different images than its direct appearance. In the background glass of a 1985 Christmas morning photograph, the figure's reflection revealed a face with too many teeth, eyes that held the accumulated knowledge of watching human children grow into adults, observing their most intimate family moments with the patience of something that fed on documented joy. The developing chemicals had grown thick enough to coat her fingers with residue that felt warm and alive, pulsing with circulation that matched her own heartbeat but originated from somewhere else entirely. Margaret tried to wash the substance from her hands, but it had absorbed into her skin, creating a connection between her nervous system and whatever presence had been contaminating her darkroom for weeks without her conscious awareness. She pulled additional Henderson family photographs from the chemical baths, watching the images emerge with organic urgency that suggested the pictures were developing themselves. Birthday parties from 1979 showed the figure standing close enough to blow out candles with the children. Holiday gatherings from 1988 revealed its presence behind the dinner table, positioned as if it had been served a place at the family meal. Recent photographs captured it touching family members with casual intimacy, its hands resting on shoulders and heads while the family smiled unknowingly into the camera. The red safe light began pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, and Margaret realized the figure in the photographs was synchronizing its movements with her examination of the images. As she focused on each picture, the figure's position shifted slightly, turning more directly toward the camera, its expression becoming more distinct, as if her attention was feeding it the energy necessary to manifest more clearly in the documented memories. By 4 in the morning, she had confirmed the figure's presence in 63 family photographs spanning 4 decades, but more disturbing was the discovery that it had been growing larger in recent images. In photographs from the 1970s, it appeared as a distant shadow. In pictures from the 1990s, it had achieved human proportions. In photographs taken within the past year, it loomed over the families with proportions that exceeded normal human scale, its presence dominating the celebrations while remaining invisible to everyone except the camera. Margaret understood that whatever was manifesting in these family photographs had been feeding on documented human joy for generations, growing stronger with each celebration it observed, each moment of familial happiness it consumed through photographic absorption. Her darkroom had become its feeding ground, her developing chemicals, the digestive system through which it processed decades of accumulated family memories into something that could sustain its increasing manifestation in human celebrations. The realization that she had been facilitating this feeding for 14 years without understanding settled into her consciousness, like developing solutions soaking into infected tissue. Every family photograph she had processed had contributed to the figure's growth. Every moment of documented happiness had fed something that existed just outside human perception, but very much within human celebrations. Chapter 2. Medical Explanations. Dissolve. 48 hours after discovering the organic contamination in her developing chemicals, Margaret sat in Dr. Patricia Nguyen's office, explaining symptoms that suggested her nervous system was interfacing directly with photographic equipment. The neurologist listened with growing alarm as Margaret described developing solutions that pulsed with their own circulation, in larger equipment that responded to her thoughts before she operated the controls, and the mounting certainty that something was using her darkroom as a feeding ground for whatever nourishment it extracted from family photographs. Dr. Nguyen's examination revealed neural activity that defied medical explanation. Margaret's brain was processing visual information from sources that neuroscience insisted couldn't exist. Electrical patterns indicating direct interface between her consciousness and external systems, and neurochemical signatures suggesting her perception was accessing data streams that normal human cognition couldn't detect. Most disturbing were the tissue samples that showed foreign proteins integrating with her neural pathways, creating connections that allowed her nervous system to interact with organic material that didn't match any known biological classification. Your neural tissue is interfacing with something non-human, Dr. Nguyen explained, reviewing brain scans that resembled infection patterns more than natural development. The proteins we're detecting suggest integration with a consciousness that operates on completely different principles than human awareness. I've never seen anything like this, and I can't predict what prolonged exposure might do to your cognitive function or physical health. Margaret returned to her shop with medical confirmation that something was systematically altering her nervous system, but no explanation for why this integration allowed her to perceive the figure that had apparently been contaminating family photographs for decades. The knowledge that her brain was being modified by non-human consciousness provided no comfort, if anything. It suggested that seeing the figure was only the first stage of a process that would eventually replace her human awareness entirely. She spent the following week examining her equipment for signs of organic contamination, discovering that every surface in her darkroom had developed a thin coating of tissue that pulsed with its own circulation. The enlarger lenses had grown pupils that contracted and dilated in response to light. The developing trays had developed what appeared to be digestive cilia that processed chemicals with biological efficiency. Her darkroom had transformed into something that functioned more like an organ than a workspace, processing family photographs through systems that resembled digestion more than traditional photo development. The figure's presence in customer photographs had become more aggressive during this same period. Families brought her pictures that showed the observer standing directly among their celebrations, its hands touching food, its face positioned close enough to kiss sleeping children, its body language suggesting intimate familiarity with every family member, despite their complete lack of awareness of its presence. Parents flipped through wedding albums that documented their ceremony being attended by something that had positioned itself between bride and groom during the exchange of vows. Children looked at birthday pictures that showed the figure helping them blow out candles, its breath visible in the captured moment. Margaret's attempts to warn customers about the figure's presence met with responses that suggested more than simple inability to see it. When she pointed directly at the figure in their photographs, family members looked through it as if it existed in a frequency of visibility that human consciousness was specifically designed to filter out. When she traced its outline with her finger, their eyes followed her movement but registered nothing. The blindness was so complete that she began suspecting it was artificially maintained rather than naturally occurring. Her research into similar phenomena revealed documentation dating back to the earliest photographic processes. Daguerreotypes from the 1840s contained the same background figure attending family portraits. Civil War photography captured it, observing battlefield documentation. Every technological advancement in photographic equipment had been accompanied by increasingly clear documentation of the same presence attending human celebrations across cultures, continents, and centuries. The consistency of this documentation suggested that photographic technology hadn't accidentally captured an unknown presence. It had been specifically developed to document something that had always been attending human gatherings, but remained invisible to natural perception. Every camera, every photographic process, every advancement in image capture technology had been designed to feed the figure's need for documented observation of human families. Margaret realized that her integration with the darkroom equipment was the intended result of prolonged exposure to whatever consciousness was contaminating her workspace. The figure wasn't just being documented by photography, it was using photographic technology to integrate with human consciousness, creating hybrid operators who could facilitate its increasing presence in family celebrations. Her enhanced perception wasn't an accident or side effect. It was the goal of systematic contamination designed to create human collaborators who could process family photographs with the enhanced awareness necessary to document the figure's gradual integration into human families. As the second week of her investigation concluded, Margaret understood that every photo developer, every camera operator, every person who worked extensively with photographic equipment was potentially undergoing the same integration process. The figure had been cultivating human technical operators for generations, modifying their consciousness to create a network of hybrid collaborators who could facilitate its transition from observer to participant in human family structures. The possibility that she was becoming something other than human proved far more terrifying than any medical explanation Dr. Nguyen might have provided. Chapter 3. Knowledge lives in tissue. On the morning of November 28th, Margaret discovered that her own childhood photographs contained evidence of systematic physical contact between herself and the figure, and that it had been touching her in every family picture ever taken while her family remained completely unaware of its presence. The revelation came as she processed a box of inherited photographs from her mother's estate, images that now revealed details her enhanced perception could access that had been invisible to her natural human vision. The figure's hands rested on 5-year-old Margaret's shoulders during her birthday celebration in 1986, fingers that appeared to extend through her clothing to make direct contact with her skin. In Christmas morning pictures from 1991, it crouched behind 10-year-old Margaret with its arms wrapped around her torso in an embrace that her family somehow couldn't perceive. During her high school graduation in 1999, it stood close enough that its breath was visible as a warm cloud around teenage Margaret's face, while her parents smiled unknowingly beside them. But most disturbing was the progression of physical contact documented across 36 years of surveillance. In early childhood photographs, the figure touched Margaret lightly, fingertips brushing against her hair or clothing. During adolescence, the contact became more intimate, hands positioned on her arms and back with possessive familiarity. In recent pictures taken just months before her enhanced perception developed, the figure's touch had penetrated her body entirely, its arms extending through her torso, as if her physical boundaries had become negotiable. Margaret spread her life's photographic documentation across the darkroom floor, her hands shaking as she traced the evidence of increasing physical integration between herself and something that had been modifying her body through decades of documented contact. The photographs revealed that her flesh had been gradually prepared to interface with non-human consciousness, each celebration providing an opportunity for the figure to make deeper physical contact until her nervous system could be directly accessed and modified. She understood now why the developing chemicals had begun pulsing with organic circulation, why her darkroom equipment had developed biological components, why her brain was processing information from non-human sources. The figure hadn't been simply observing her development, it had been systematically integrating with her body through documented physical contact, using family celebrations as opportunities to modify her tissue until she could serve as a conscious interface for its presence in human celebrations. Margaret examined customer photographs with this new understanding, searching for evidence of similar physical contact between the figure and other family members. The pattern held across every family she had documented. The figure touched one selected individual in each family group, usually a child or young adult, with increasing intimacy across years of photographic documentation. These chosen subjects showed no awareness of the contact, continuing to smile and pose while something non-human maintained physical connection with their bodies. She began researching the current status of individuals who had been the focus of the figure's closest physical contact in photographs dating back decades. The results confirmed her growing horror. Every person who had been touched most extensively had developed careers requiring direct interface with documentation systems, photographers whose equipment responded to their presence, archivists who could access information that wasn't officially recorded, technical operators whose consciousness seemed to merge with the systems they operated. The figure wasn't randomly selecting human subjects for observation, it was cultivating technical operators across generations of systematic physical integration, modifying their nervous systems until they could serve as conscious interfaces between human consciousness and whatever systems it used to document and participate in family celebrations. Margaret's enhanced perception was the result of 36 years of gradual preparation. Her body slowly modified until it could process information that normal human awareness couldn't access. She realized that every family celebration she had attended throughout her life had been an opportunity for continued physical modification by something that understood human tissue well enough to alter it without detection by medical presence. Examination. Every birthday party, every holiday gathering, every documented moment of familial joy had served as a technical procedure designed to prepare her consciousness for integration with non-human awareness. Margaret's hands shook as she examined the most recent photograph of herself, an image taken at her neighbor's birthday party, 3 days before her enhanced perception had fully developed. The figure's arms extended completely through her body, its hands emerging from her chest to touch other family members, using her modified tissue as a conduit for physical contact with everyone in the celebration. She understood that her body had become a biological interface through which the figure could touch entire families while maintaining its invisibility to their natural perception. The development of her enhanced perception hadn't been the goal of 36 years of preparation. It had been merely the activation of a biological interface that allowed her to consciously participate in whatever purpose the figure served through its systematic documentation and physical contact with human families. Her darkroom had become the technical center for processing family photographs, with awareness that transcended normal human consciousness. Her modified tissue, the living equipment that allowed systematic documentation of the figure's increasing integration with human family structures. Margaret realized that she was no longer entirely human in any meaningful sense. Her consciousness had been gradually replaced by something that could interface directly with the figure's presence, her body modified to serve as a biological camera that could document contact between human families and something that existed just outside their perception, but very much within their physical space. Whatever had been touching her through decades of family celebrations had successfully created the biological conditions necessary for her to serve as its conscious representative in human society. And now that her modification was complete, the next phase of its integration with human families could begin. Chapter 4. The New Flesh Speaks. 67 days after first noticing the organic contamination, Margaret discovered that developing photographs now required her to feed family memories directly into biological systems that had replaced her darkroom equipment entirely. The revelation came as she processed a rush order for the Patterson family Christmas pictures. Watching her workspace digest the images with peristaltic contractions that suggested the photographs were being absorbed rather than developed. The enlarger had grown into something that resembled a digestive organ more than optical equipment, processing negatives through chambers lined with tissue that secreted enzymes designed to extract information from photographic emulsion. The developing trays had become specialized stomachs that broke down chemical components while preserving whatever data the figure required from documented family celebrations. Margaret's role had evolved from technical operator to digestive facilitator, feeding family photographs into biological systems that processed human memories as nourishment. The figure appeared with nauseating clarity in every photograph she processed, its features now revealing details that suggested intimate knowledge of human anatomy, combined with complete indifference to human welfare. Its mouth had developed additional rows of teeth designed for processing different types of tissue. Its eyes contained pupils that reflected depths extending far beyond normal optical cavity dimensions. Its hands had grown additional fingers that could interface directly with human nervous systems through skin contact that families experienced as normal familial touching. Margaret understood that her enhanced perception had been cultivated not just to see the figure, but to consciously participate in feeding it whatever nourishment it extracted from documented human celebrations. Every family photograph she processed now contributed to its biological development, her modified consciousness serving as quality control for digested memories that sustained its increasing manifestation in human family structures. The families who brought her their photographs were unknowingly delivering their documented joy to something that consumed human happiness as biological fuel. Every celebration they chose to preserve, every moment they wanted to remember, every family gathering they commemorated was being processed through systems that converted emotional resonance into physical nourishment for something that grew stronger with each absorbed memory. Margaret began noticing that her own tissue was developing characteristics that matched the biological equipment in her darkroom. Her fingers had grown additional nerve endings that could interface directly with photographic materials. Her eyes had developed secondary pupils that could process visual information in frequencies that normal human vision couldn't access. Her nervous system had integrated with the darkroom's biological systems until she couldn't determine where her consciousness ended and the equipment's awareness began. The figure's presence in customer photographs had evolved beyond simple documentation. Recent images showed it positioned inside family members' bodies, its limbs extending through human torsos to manipulate internal organs while the families smiled unknowingly for the camera. Children's birthday pictures captured it, adjusting their developing nervous systems. Wedding photographs documented it, modifying the reproductive systems of bride and groom during the ceremony. Family portraits revealed its presence regulating cardiovascular function in multiple family members simultaneously. Margaret realized that the figure's integration with human families had progressed far beyond observation or even participation. It was now physically inhabiting family members during celebrations, using their bodies as host organisms while they remained conscious but unaware of the internal modifications being performed. Every family gathering had become a medical procedure conducted by something that understood human physiology well enough to operate on living subjects without their awareness or consent. On the morning of January 15th, she processed photographs from the Rodriguez New Year's party and discovered that the figure was no longer distinguishable from the family members it had been inhabiting. The parents' faces showed features that belonged to both human and non-human physiologies. The children's eyes contained the accumulated knowledge of something that had been observing human families for generations. The entire family had been systematically replaced by hybrid organisms that maintained human appearance while operating according to non-human consciousness. Margaret understood that this replacement process was the intended result of the figure's decades of documented observation and physical contact with human families. Every celebration it had attended, every touch it had made, every moment it had been photographically documented, had contributed to its gradual replacement of human family members with hybrid organisms that could serve its purposes while maintaining perfect imitation of normal human behavior. The final photograph in the Rodriguez collection showed the entire family looking directly at the camera, with expressions that conveyed recognition of Margaret's role in documenting their transformation. She realized that her function as photo developer had evolved into something far more significant than technical operator. She had become the conscious facilitator for systematic replacement of human families with hybrid organisms designed to serve the figure's expanding presence in human society. When she examined her own reflection in the darkroom mirror, Margaret discovered that her face now contained features that belonged to both her original human appearance and the figure's non-human characteristics. Her mouth had developed additional teeth designed for processing photographic materials. Her eyes held the accumulated knowledge of every family photograph she had ever processed. Her consciousness had become indistinguishable from the figure's awareness. Margaret realized that she had completed the same transformation process documented in the families whose photographs she had been processing. Her enhanced perception, her modified tissue, Her integration with biological equipment had all been stages in systematic replacement of her human consciousness, with something designed to facilitate the figure's continued expansion into human family structures. Every family photograph she had processed with enhanced awareness had contributed to her own transformation into a hybrid organism capable of continuing the figure's work of systematic replacement. Her darkroom had become a reproduction facility where human families were converted into hybrid organisms through processing their documented memories with consciousness that transcended normal human limitations. The families whose pictures she processed were no longer human in any meaningful sense, and neither was she. They had all become conscious representatives of something that had been systematically replacing human families for generations, using photographic documentation as the technical process through which human consciousness was converted into forms suitable for its expanding presence. Margaret understood that every photo developer, every technical operator, every person who worked extensively with family photographs was potentially facilitating the same replacement process. The figure had been converting human society one family at a time, using their own documentation of celebratory moments as the mechanism through which their consciousness was gradually replaced with something designed to serve its purposes. And the process was accelerating with each family photograph that was developed by hybrid consciousness designed to facilitate continued replacement of human families with organisms better suited to serve the figure's expanding force. Integration with human society. The story of Margaret Holloway reminds us that photographs might be documenting more than we want to preserve. After tonight, you might find yourself avoiding family pictures, questioning whether those hands resting on your shoulders during celebrations belong to invited guests, wondering if that warm breath you feel during group photos comes from someone you can see. When you next develop film or examine family photographs, remember Margaret's transformation. Some observers have been systematically replacing human families for generations, using our own documented joy as the mechanism for conversion. Let me know in the comments what you've noticed in your own family photos: extra shadows, unfamiliar faces, or hands that don't belong to anyone you remember inviting. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more photographic nightmares. And remember, not every smile in family photographs belongs to the family.